Don't touch him. Please, don't come up behind him." The housekeeper's voice trembled and dissolved into the silence of the enormous house on the hill above Busan. Beyond the tall windows, the gray sea breathed, and below, in the middle of an empty living room, a boy sat on the cold stone floor and took a clock apart. He was 9. Yoon Do-yeon bent over the old wall mechanism someone had lifted down and laid in front of him, and his thin fingers moved fast, sure, almost angry. He pulled out gear after gear, spring after spring, and lined them up on the floor in a perfect row, like soldiers standing to attention. Then he put it all back together, and took it apart again, and put it back together. He never lifted his eyes. He never said a word. He had been doing this for 4 hours. "Do-yeon?" the housekeeper called softly. "Sweetheart, eat something. Just 1 spoonful." The boy didn't answer. He never answered. For 5 months now, not a single word had left his room, his throat, his mouth. He got up. He ate if they sat him down by force. He lay down to sleep. And every free minute, he took apart and reassembled the same clock, the one his mother had once repaired, sitting beside him on this very floor, explaining how a small living machine breathes inside. The clock ran, and his mother had stopped. One day, a spring wouldn't seat back into place. Do-yeon tried again. It wouldn't go. Once more, the metal slipped from his fingers and rang against the stone. And then the boy who had not made a sound in 5 months suddenly screamed. No words, just a high, thin, terrible cry that made the housekeeper's knees buckle. He seized the clock's body and hurled it across the room. Glass sprayed, gears scattered across the floor in a silver rain, and the boy fell face down into his hands, and his thin back shook. Upstairs, at the door of the room he no longer entered, Yoon Tae-oh stood and could not take a single step. He built things that ended up in textbooks. His signature on a project was worth more than some people earn in a lifetime. He could calculate how to redistribute the load in a structure that by every law should have collapsed, and it stood. In his world, there was no problem without a solution. But every time his son looked at him with those dark eyes full of silence, Yoon Tae-oh felt the ground go out from under him. Because in those eyes was a question he had no answer to. Where is Mommy? And why didn't you bring her back? He thought he had tried everything. He was wrong. Because at that very moment, at the gates of the house on the hill, stood a young woman from Ethiopia. She hadn't brought medicine. She hadn't brought foreign specialists and clever methods. She had brought a set of old chisels wrapped in canvas and the smell of cedar oil on her fingers, the smell of wood that can be mended. Before we go on, I have one simple question for you. If you could bring back just one broken thing from your past, whole and warm, the way it used to be, what would it be? Tell me in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from. If you love warm Afro-Korean stories about love, family, loss, and second chances, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe, because this story might stay with you long after it ends. And now, let's begin. Selam Bekele received the message 3 days before she first climbed the hill above Busan. She was sitting in her small workshop in the old part of the city, a place that smelled of sawdust, wax, and cold coffee, finishing the restoration of an 18th century chest of drawers when her phone buzzed. Her mentor, Mr. So, the only person in this country who had known her since she was an apprentice, wrote short and to the point. There's a job, the Yoon family. Take it. Salam knew the name. All of Busan knew it. Yoon Tae-oh, an architect whose glass towers stood in 30 cities around the world, a man they wrote about in magazines, always with that particular tone people use for those they slightly fear. She called back. "The house on the hill," Mr. So said. "An old estate he's been rebuilding for 10 years himself. The owner wants all the wood inside restored. The panels, the staircase, the old library. Several months of work." "Why me? He has the money for a whole crew." Mr. So was quiet for a moment. "Because there's a child there." And he told her. About the architect's wife, Jiwan, a painter, a restorer, a woman who, they said, had turned that cold house into a living place. About a car on a wet highway 5 months ago. About a boy of 9 who hadn't spoken a word since that day, and who took the same broken clock apart and put it back together, day after day. "He doesn't need a carpenter, Selim," the old man said. "He needs someone who knows how to mend broken things so that it can be seen. You understand what I mean." She understood. She had spent her whole life mending broken things. "I'll take it. There's one more thing." Mr. Saw sighed. "Yun Teo is a difficult man. He's already sent away 2 child psychologists and a whole team from overseas. He's not used to being told no. If you do something wrong, he'll crush your reputation with a single phone call." "Then I'll do everything right." "I'm serious, Selim." "So am I. I don't take a job for the sake of my reputation. I take it because someone needs help. If he wants a servant who'll bow to his every word, let him look elsewhere. If he wants someone who will actually help his son, I'm available." There was silence on the line. "That's exactly what I was afraid you'd say." 3 days later, Salam stood at the gates of the Yun estate. The guard examined her documents so long and so carefully, you'd think she was applying to a secret laboratory. When he finally waved her through, she walked up a driveway so long it felt like a separate journey. The house rose ahead, beautiful and cold. More museum than home. A butler met her at the door, his face perfectly polite. And behind that politeness, a kind of exhaustion. The particular exhaustion that builds up when, day after day, you watch a family fall apart. "Ms. Bekele, my name is Park. Mr. Yoon is expecting you." She followed him through halls that echoed with emptiness. No photographs on the walls, no flowers, no sign that a child lived here. Only expensive furniture and a heavy silence. And, Salam noticed at once with a professional eye, beautiful old wood everywhere. Oak panels, a handmade staircase, banisters polished smooth by decades of palms. Someone had loved this house very much, and someone had stopped caring for it a long time ago. They stopped at a study door. The butler knocked once. "Come in." The voice was cold, level, accustomed to obedience. Yun Teo stood by the window, his back to the door. He didn't turn around. "You're the restorer from Mr. So." "Yes, Selam Bekele. I had my people look into you. Trained in Addis Ababa, then an internship in Milan. 8 years of practice. You've worked with museum collections." He turned. "An impressive resume. But a resume doesn't mend wood." Selam met his gaze without looking away. He was taller than she'd expected. Sharp features, dark eyes that gave away nothing. Handsome in that severe way statues are, the ones carved out of ice. But beneath the cold, she saw something else. Exhaustion. Desperation. A man stretched to his breaking point. "A resume doesn't mend wood," she said calmly. "I mend wood." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, irritation. She couldn't tell.
I need everything finished by winter. The library, the staircase, the panels in the West Wing. Work wherever you like, but there's one rule.
He paused.
You do not enter the living room. My son is in there. And you do not go near him.
Selim tilted her head slightly. May I ask why?
Because I say so.
All right. But if the child comes to me himself, I won't send him away. I don't know how to send children away. The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees.
Ms. Bekele, I hired you to mend wood, not to raise my son.
And I'm not going to raise him. I just won't pretend he isn't there. Those are different things. He looked at her with a cold, unmoving gaze. Most people in her place would have apologized, backed down. Selim simply waited.
You're very direct,
he said at last. I've been told.
Most people don't speak to me this way.
Maybe that's part of the problem. Something shifted in his face. He turned back to the window. The conversation was over, without a word. But she had understood the important thing. Yoon Tae-oh was mourning more than his wife. He was running from his own grief, burying himself in work so he wouldn't have to feel anything. And his son was not the only one in this house who needed healing. For the first week, Selim did not see the boy. She came in the morning, the butler led her to the West Wing, and she worked, stripping old lacquer from oak panels, mixing compounds, matching shades. The work was slow and honest, and Selim loved it precisely for that. Wood cannot be rushed. It reveals its cracks exactly when it's ready. The living room was 2 doors down. Now and then a sound drifted from it, a thin, rhythmic clink of metal against stone. Take apart, put together. Take apart, put together. Selim worked and listened, and gradually she began to hear in that sound not obsession, but something else. A plea. A child calling for someone in the only language he had left. On the 8th day, it happened. She was kneeling at a panel, rubbing in wax, when she felt eyes on her. She didn't lift her head. She kept working, as if she'd noticed nothing. In the doorway of the West Wing stood the boy. Thin, pale, in a crumpled shirt. In his hand he held that same gear, small brass with one broken tooth. He was watching her hands, the way they moved across the wood. The old crack in the panel she was filling with a thin, thin layer of compound, so that the oak would become whole again. Selim did not turn, did not smile, did not beckon him. She had long ago understood. Wounded children don't need methods and strategies. They need safety. They need someone who asks nothing of them. She simply went on mending the crack, slowly, calmly, as if there were no one in the room but her and the wood. The boy stood there for 5 minutes, 10. Then he left, as soundlessly as he'd come. But the next day he came again, and again stood in the doorway, and again watched the crack disappear under her fingers, as though it had never been there. On the 3rd day he took a step inside. On the 4th, he sat down on the floor by the wall, knees drawn up to his chest, still clutching the broken gear in his fist, and watched. Selim worked and, quietly, under her breath, began to hum. Not a song, just a melody, old, slow, wordless. The one her grandmother used to hum to her in Addis Ababa, when the world felt too big and too frightening. She didn't look at the boy. The melody was meant for the wood, or for herself, or for no one. The child's back against the wall loosened, just a little. Yoon Tae-oh learned of it from the butler. He's coming out of the living room, Park said that evening, keeping his voice level.
He comes to watch her work. The architect looked up from his drawings. I told her not to go near him. And she doesn't, Mr. Yoon. It's he who goes near her.
The butler paused. He hasn't come out of that room for anyone in 5 months. Yoon Tae-oh said nothing. But that night, late, he went down and stopped at the west wing door. The light was still on. Selam was gathering her tools. And on the floor, by the wall, lay his son, asleep, curled up, for the first time in a long while, not gripping the clock, but holding a single brass gear in his palm. Salam noticed him in the doorway, but didn't startle. "He fell asleep," she said quietly.
I see.
"He felt safe watching me work. Sometimes that's all it takes. Watching someone's hands mend broken things." Yoon Tae-oh was silent for a long moment. "What were you humming?" She was surprised he'd heard. "An old lullaby. No words. My grandmother's." "Take him upstairs," he began, then corrected himself as if frightened by his own softness. "No, I'll do it." He bent down, lifted the boy into his arms, carefully, the way you lift something you're afraid to break again. Doyeon didn't wake, only pressed his forehead into his father's shoulder. And Selim saw something break in this man of ice, just for a moment, one moment, before he went still again. "Thank you," he said, not looking at her. "I did nothing." "You did more than 14 specialists in 5 months." He carried his son upstairs, and Selim stood in the empty workshop, among the smell of wax and shavings, and thought that it was not only the wood in this house that would need mending. 2 weeks passed, and everything began to change. Slowly, the way a folded leaf opens in the sun. Doyeon no longer just watched. He sat closer. He handed her tools, the wrong one at first, then, after looking, the right one. He learned to tell the roughing chisel from the finishing one. He said not a word, but his eyes began to ask questions, and Selim answered them, with her hands, by showing, with patience. One day, she brought a small box from her workshop, full of wood offcuts and old parts, and set it beside him without a word. The boy stared at it a long time. Then he looked inside. There were tiny gears, brass hands, fragments of mechanisms, things she'd collected for years from antique shops, not knowing why. Doyoon looked up at her. For the first time, his eyes held not silence, but a question. "May I?" Salam nodded, and the boy, who for 5 months had only broken and reassembled the same thing, began to build. He made something of his own from the offcuts, crooked, strange, like nothing at all. Salam didn't correct him. She simply stayed near. Sometimes she hummed, sometimes she handed him the tool he needed. And day by day, Doyoon ate better, slept sounder, and more often fell asleep not in the living room by the broken clock, but here, by the wall, among the shavings, under the quiet melody from Addis Ababa. Yoon Tae-oh began coming to the west wing, first to the threshold as his son once had, then across it. He would sit off to the side, silent, watching his boy and this stranger bent over the wood, living in a world he'd had no way into for 5 months. "Sit closer," Selim said one day without turning. "Don't say anything. Just be here." He sat. Doyeon tensed when his father came near, but Selim handed the boy a part and his attention returned to the wood, and a few minutes later, he leaned his shoulder against his father's arm without noticing. Yoon Tae-oh froze, afraid to break the spell. Then, very carefully, barely breathing, he laid a hand on his son's head. The boy didn't pull away. The architect lifted his eyes to Selim, and in them stood tears he wouldn't let himself shed. "I haven't touched him in 5 months,"
he whispered later, walking her to her car. Every time I tried, he pulled away. I think he blamed me for not bringing her back. He doesn't understand what death is, Selim said softly. He only knows that something is broken, and you're the one who fixes everything in the world. Except this. Yunteo looked at her for a long moment. How do you know these things? Selim leaned against the car door. When I was 8, my parents divorced. Badly. Ugly. I was caught in the middle. My grandmother took me in. She was a craftswoman. She restored old furniture, mended what everyone else threw away. She used to say that every broken thing carries a memory of how it was when it was whole. And the craftsman's job isn't to pretend the crack was never there, it's to help the thing go on living, with the crack. She paused. When my grandmother died, I nearly lost myself. But her craft saved me. Every time I pick up a chisel, I feel her near. That's why I do this work. Because I know what it's like to be broken. And I know what it's like to become whole again. Yunteo was silent. Then he said, And you did? Become whole? In the end, yes. It took years, and the pain never fully went away. But it changed. It became something you carry with you, instead of something that crushes you. He looked off to the side. I couldn't carry it. All this time I've been running from it. I know, Selim said. It's obvious to someone who's done the same thing. A moment between them turned into something new. Understanding. Recognition. I need to get better, he said quietly. For Doyun. And for yourself, too. He needs a father who knows how to feel, not just one who provides. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. That's the second time you've lectured me on parenting. And I'll keep doing it until it works. She got into the car. In the rearview mirror, she saw him standing on the driveway, watching her go. Meanwhile, in another part of Busan, someone else was thinking about Selim Bekele. Yoon-hari sat in her apartment, scrolling through photographs on her phone. The house on the hill. Selim arriving in the morning. Selam leaving in the evening. Yunteo walking her to her car. Hadi had known Teo since childhood. Their families had been close for decades. Everyone had long decided the two of them would marry, sooner or later, until Jiwon came along. Beautiful, strange, free Jiwon, who took Teo's heart before Hadi ever had a chance. She had waited through their entire marriage, telling herself that one day he would see his mistake.
которые соединяются
Then
с
Jiwon
железный
died,
заслон от штормов.
and Hadi began to wait again. She gave him time to grieve. She
В
positioned
устьях рек
herself in the
пресная вода,
convenient place,
стекающая с
the
центральных
caring
хребтов.
friend, the reliable shoulder, the one who was always there.
Зоны
She had
с
been
резко
so
меняющимся
close.
уровнем солености на коротких
And now this
дистанциях,
woman,
где
this
можно одновременно
foreigner,
встретить как
this nobody
пресноводных,
from
так
nowhere,
и
who
морских
walked
рыб.
into the Yoon house as if she belonged there, making the boys smile,
Самой характерной
making
которые
Teo
переплетаются
smile,
между собой и
taking
образуют
everything
длинные зеленые
Hadi had
коридоры,
waited years
тянущиеся.
for. She set the phone down.
Во время
She
прилива
needed to
весь
learn
лес
more about
чистит
Selam
гладкую,
Bekele.
как зеркало,
Everyone
водную
has a weak
поверхность,
spot.
в которой
Everyone has a
отражается небо.
past. All that was left was to find it. A month later, Doyen
Супертайфуна
brought
Гаян,
Salam a clock.
именно эта
Not a
мандровая
broken
система
one, the one he'd
поглотила
smashed
и
that first day
естественные
had long
линии
been taken
обороны
away.
для защиты жителей
A different
побережья
one.
Дейти.
The wall mechanism from the library. Old, beautiful, with a handmade wooden
Нежной
case.
песчаной косе,
He set it in
уходящей
front of
вглубь
Salam on
океана
the
на сотни
workbench,
метров.
looked her
На
in the eye,
Филиппинах
and
существует
pointed at the
Букидно.
frozen hands.
Это прохладное высокогорье
Fix
напоминает
it. The first clear word he had said to
и
her in
открывают
all
взору
that time.
холмистые гряды, покрытые
All
сочной
right,
зеленой травой,
she answered
которая
quietly. Let's fix it together. They took the case apart. Salam showed,
Букиднон также
Doyen
является местом
repeated.
расположения
The
ананасовых
wood
плант,
turned out to be
создающих зеленый
beautiful.
сельскохозяйственный
Old
пояс до
walnut,
самого
lovingly
горизонта.
joined by someone's hands. And inside, behind the back panel, where there is usually nothing, Salam's fingers
Этот регион
felt
знаменит своей одноименной трассой,
a
изучая по
sheet folded
высокогорному
in
плато.
four, yellowed, soft with age,
Не, будто ваш
She
автомобиль
unfolded
проезжает
it
сквозь
carefully
плотные слои белых
and
облаков,
went
когда
still. It was a drawing, the diagram of one rare joint, a complex, almost forgotten way of joining wood without a single nail, so that the seam becomes stronger than the material
житницу
itself.
всей страны.
And beside
Она
it,
обеспечивает
written by
внутренний и
hand,
внешний рынок
ran
огромным
notes.
экспортных фруктов.
And the handwriting. Selim knew that handwriting. The slant of the letters, the habit of placing a tiny dot in the center
Кнабата
of
скрывает в
every
себе
loop,
сеть из
the
более чем 100
particular line
больших и
drawn
малых
under
пещер,
important
которые
words. She had seen it 1,000 times as a child.
в этой
In an
системе в
old
прошлом
handmade
бойцы
booklet,
революционного
her
движения
grandmother had once
Катикунан
put together for her
использовали ее как
students in
ловушку
Addis
в ночной
Ababa.
тьме.
A thin, hand-printed pamphlet that had gone out to barely 100
Умело
copies.
переоборудованы под нужды
A guide to
временного
restoration,
правительства.
her
Здесь
grandmother had
находились
called
пещерный год, и
My
вы
notes
никогда не
for those
увидите
who
ее
come after.
прежде.
Selim sank onto a stool.
Местные
Her
помещения,
hands were
где работал
shaking.
генерал Егинальдо.
That evening, she found Yun Teo in his study. I need to show you something. She laid the sheet on the
Ходы
desk.
подвесных
She
кабельных
told
мостов
him about her
через
grandmother,
реку Мадлу.
about the
Они
booklet,
создают
about
захватывающие
the
снасти.
handwriting. Yun Teo was silent for a long time, looking at the yellowed
Эта
paper.
территория представляет собой
Then he
тропический
stood,
лес,
went to a
выросший на
cabinet,
суровые и
took
отвесные
something
скалы
out, and
первозданной
came back.
красоты.
It was the very same pamphlet.
Несмотря
Thin,
на сложные
red to
условия
tatters,
известняковой
its
среды,
page corners
биокнабата,
folded down,
стрелепинская бородатая
with
свинья,
notes in the
макака,
margins, in Jiwan's hand.
исключительно в
She found
горных
this in an
районах
antique
острова
shop a
Мусон.
year before we married, he said hollowly. She was looking for a way to restore that clock, a
Покидая
wedding gift from my mother. No one would take it on. The
это
mechanism
косонест
was
одерживает
considered
рекорд
hopeless.
как многоуровневая
And in this
система
booklet
каскадов
was the
самым
method she
впечатляющим
needed. She learned from it. She repaired that clock herself
Известняковые
and hung
пороги,
it in the
словно
library,
гигантские
and
ступени,
every evening
образовали
before
природные
bed
панорамы.
she wound it. It was her ritual. He lifted his eyes.
волшебным бирюзовым
She used to
цветом,
say the
будто
person
миллионы
who wrote this
сапфиров
book
растворились на
had
самом дне.
saved her memory of this house. That
Этот
somewhere
завораживающий
there was a
оттенок
craftsman
достигает
whose
своего
hands
лучи и
she would
заставляет
never
водную
see,
гладь
but to
сверкать
whom
подобно
she
россыпи
owed a
алмазов.
debt. That craftsman was my grandmother, Selim whispered.
Климат,
They looked
который
at each
легко
other.
рассеивает сильную жару
How
свыше
is this
30
possible?
градусов Цельсия,
She asked quietly. I don't know. Teo's voice was
приливов и
strained.
отливов,
Jiwan
отчего
loved
весь
finding
остров
forgotten
кажется
things.
живым,
She
которые
said
позволяют
things everyone
путешественникам
else threw
свободно
away have
раскачиваться
more
в воздухе
soul
и
than new
чувствовать
ones. And she found your grandmother's book.
She learned from it,
Мы приближаемся к
repaired
песчаной
this
косе
clock,
Ланжиот,
and she
которую
passed the
часто
craft
называют
on to
Мальдивами.
They fixed clocks together, right here on the floor.
На полностью
And now,
исчезать вслед
by
за
a
ритмом
coincidence I
морских
can't
приливов.
explain, you're standing in my house, teaching my son the very same thing.
Прозрачно,
From the
что вы
very
можете
same
отчетливо
book,
видеть тень собственной
the
лодки на
granddaughter
песчаном
of
дне
that
и
very
постепенно
craftsman.
темнеет по мере
Selim's
увеличения
head was
глубины.
spinning. It couldn't be a coincidence. Too precise, too perfect. But what else could
Песчаная
it be?
коса протяженностью около
Mr.
7
Yoon,
километров
I
может быть
swear to you, I didn't
поглощена
know. I didn't know your wife existed until I took this job.
в боководную
you.
зону.
His voice softened. I'm not accusing you. I'm only trying to
Местные деревянные
understand.
дома на своях
So
стоят
am
на
I.
тонких опорах,
The
поднимаются,
silence
они
stretched
кажутся
between
парящими
them,
прямо над водой.
heavy with questions no one could answer. Jiwan believed in fate, Teo said at last,
Хижины без
said there are no
кондиционеров и
coincidences.
роскошных
that
удобств.
the world sends
Однако-
us exactly the people we need, exactly when we need them.
Туристического
And did you
сезона,
believe her?
как только отлив обнажает
I
песок,
believed in
местные рыбаки
calculations,
под
in
кокосы,
loads,
создавая
in
плавучий
blueprints,
рынок, который
in what can
существует
be
всего
measured.
несколько часов в день.
He looked out the window. But standing here, knowing what I now know, I no longer understand what to believe. Selim had no
От мелкого
answer.
пика Калангаман
she had a
неожиданно
feeling.
обнажает две
A feeling
песчаные
that she'd
косы
ended
по
up
обоим концам
exactly where she was meant to
которая
be.
является самой
And that
высокой вершиной
somehow,
острова
some
Негрос
way,
и одним
Ji-won had known. After that, something in the house
с собой
shifted
часть
for good.
Тихоокеанского огненного
Do-yoon
кольца,
began to
региона
speak.
со всемирно
One
известной
word at a
мощной
time at first. Give. More.
озера в кратерах
Here.
потухших жерл, цвет
Then
которых
fragments of
меняется от
sentences.
бирюзового до
He
пепельного.
showed Selim his little creations, tugged her by the hand to the workbench,
Что
demanded her
служит
attention.
признаком
He began
непрекращающейся
to laugh,
геотермальной активности.
quietly, disbelievingly, as if remembering all over again how it was done. And that laugh was like the first light of spring after a long
Склоны гор
winter.
Канлаон питают редких
staff
и
couldn't believe
эндемичных
their
видов
eyes.
животных и
He
растений.
laughed today, the cook reported to the
Посреди
butler.
бескрайней синей
A
пучины.
real laugh. And he asked for seconds. He
Богатая
called Miss
вулканическая
Vitale by
почва
name
вокруг
when he
горы
woke up,
оказалась
the
очень
housekeeper added.
благоприятной, но важной
Park
водой
allowed
весь
himself a
местный
smile.
регион.
Perhaps miracles do exist after all. But it wasn't a miracle. It was patience, presence, and the power of a craft. The
Продолжая наш
power of
упак,
hands that
который
mend
заслуженно
broken
называют
things in
последним
front of someone who
нетронутым
thought
раем на
nothing could be
Филиппинах.
mended anymore. Yoon Tae was changing too. He began coming not at the
Тончайший
end of the
слой воды
day,
на
but in the middle
бескрайних
of it.
песчаных
He
пляжах,
started leaving work
вся морская
early.
гладь,
He would
возникает
sit
полное
beside his son,
ощущение
and
прогулки
together
прямо
they
по воздуху.
planed, sanded, assembled, 3 pairs of hands over a single piece of wood.
Оттенок
Once, in
от
the middle of the work,
ярко-бирюзового до
Do-yoon
глубокого
slipped his
синего.
small hand into his father's, then reached out his other hand to Selim. And for a moment,
Удали от
the 3 of them were joined by wood and silence.
Само название
that
Калангаман
silence was
уникальной
whole,
особенностью
not
этого
broken.
места считается группа
goodbyes
островов,
at the
которые
car
появились
grew
у
longer.
уровня воды,
He
превращая
asked about his mother
исследовательский
today,
маршрут в
Teo said one
настоящую
evening, for the first time in a long while, but differently.
покрывают бескрайние
crying,
плантации кокосовых пальм,
just asking.
которые служат главным
What did he ask? He asked whether his
Чтобы
mother can
добраться до
see him from
Балабака,
the stars.
требуется труднодоступность
yes.
уберегла здешние
He
места
said,
от следов современного мира.
Then let her know I'm fixing the clocks right.
Оставляя позади
Selim's
первоздан
heart
из
ached.
очень немногих
He also
островов
said-
в мире, где
Teo
количество
paused.
вулканов превышает
He wants his mother to know about you. That there's a kind lady who mends wood the
вулканов
way his
формируют
mommy
весь
did.
местный ландшафт,
That his
а
mommy
гора
would have liked
Сибок,
you.
Сибок возвышается, заключается в
Selim
том,
didn't know
что
what to
пернатые
say.
здесь почти не
I
гнездятся
think
из-за
Ji-won
крошечной
would have
площади
liked you
суши.
too, he added quietly. She valued people who spoke plainly.
Это
who
самый
didn't treat her
высокий
like
и
an
самый
architect's
активный
wife.
вулкан на острове,
I didn't know
вершина
her.
дает величественное
You'd
и
have understood
мистическое
each other.
зрелище.
Something in his voice tightened her chest.
По мере подъема на высоту
Teo,
растительность
I-
заметно меняется, переходя от дикими
looked away.
орхидеями, которые
know
цепляются за
it's
влажные
complicated.
крутые склоны.
You work for me. You're healing my son. There are boundaries. There are.
Сданный вид, где
And I
крупные
respect
водопады срываются прямо со
But
скал, а
He
открытые
met her
горячие.
eyes. But I can't remember the last time I looked forward to seeing someone
Океана и
the
зеленью
way I look
лесов.
forward to seeing you. Selim's breath
Тем
caught.
следы разрушительной
I'm not
истории
asking
острова
for anything.
все еще можно
went
увидеть
on.
на матонувшем
I'm not expecting anything. I just wanted you to know. Because for
После
5
мощного
months I
извержения.
felt nothing. And now I feel something.
А недалеко
I
от
don't
берега
want to
существует
pretend
Белый
I
остров,
don't.
который
Salam
представляет
was
собой
quiet
хрупкую
for a long
песчезать во время прилива.
Part of her wanted to step back, to remind him of the professional boundaries, to protect herself. But another part understood him too well, because she felt the same.
Путешествие продолжает.
for being
Практически
honest,
нетронутым
she
коммерцией,
said finally.
район для трекинга и
And I'll be
снорклинга.
honest
Про-
too. I feel something as well. I don't yet
Это
know
место
what
с
it
зонами,
is, and
которые
I'm not
меняют
ready
свой
to
цвет
name it.
в зависимости от
but it's
времени
there.
года.
Something moved in his face. Relief.
Ветряные склоны острова покрыты
and
диких лесах
caution.
или высокогорьях,
So what do we
поэтому
do?
их массовое появление на
We
крошечном
focus
тропе.
on
Вся
Do-yoon.
растительность
I'm
сосредоточена
here
лишь в
for
самом
him.
центре
That
острова,
has to stay
где
the
выстроились
priority.
ряды
Agreed. And we don't rush.
We don't make decisions on emotion
Главным занятием
alone.
здесь считается
We
не
give it
просто
time.
купание, а
How
трекинг
much
погоды
time?
объективов камер,
As much as it
захватывающую
needs.
панораму на 300.
He nodded
60
slowly.
градусов
I can wait. For 5 months, I felt nothing at all.
холмов,
I can
которая
wait longer
приобретает приятный изумрудный
something
оттенок
real.
в сезон дождей и
Salam smiled softly. That's the most patient thing I've heard you say.
природной особенностью этого
Don't get
места
used to it.
стал детский хор
She got into the
Валависона,
car.
когда
But
вместо
before she
сонных
closed the
песен в
door,
атмосфере
she looked
тепла
at
и
him once
радости
more. Teo. Yes? Thank you for not running away.
пользуется
considered it.
всемирной
What
известностью
stopped you? He looked at the house, then at her.
царства белого песка.
You. Both of you. And this time, in the
Прозрачности
rearview
воды,
mirror,
насыщенному
see a man
бирюзовому
watching her
оттенку
leave.
в окружении
she saw a man waiting for her to come back.
То, что
A
дало
few
ее
days
начало
later,
в горах
Hari
или
came to the
наземных
estate
ручьях,
uninvited.
а непрерывно
The butler showed
выталкивается
her
на
into the east
поверхность
sitting room, and then, with visible reluctance, told Selim that a guest
белоснежное
wished to see
песчаное
her.
дно. В то же время
Hari
у
was
входа в
elegant
пещеру
in
цвет
that
воды
careless way
меняет
that knows its own worth. Designer dress, flawless makeup, beauty perfectly
точную
aware of
глубину
its
и
own
масштаб
price.
этой подземной
She
пещерной
smiled when
системы
Selim
под руслом
came in,
реки. День ровно
but
в
the smile
12 часов
didn't reach
дня
her
во время
eyes.
регулярного кормления тысячи
Ms.
рыб
Bekele,
устремляются
thank you for making
обратно в
time.
систему пещер.
I wasn't aware we had a meeting. Consider it an
Идете на
informal
лодке к
chat.
центру реки,
Woman
вы
to
можете
woman.
заметить визуальный
Hari
эффект,
gestured to a
создаваемый
chair. I wanted to thank you.
Чтобы
for your work
защитить эту
with little
уязвимую
Doyun.
экосистему,
The
местное
family has been
пространство
through so
становится
much.
практически
It's wonderful to see the
неразличимой.
boy doing better. Thank you. You've clearly built a beautiful bond with him. And with Teo, too, I
Расположенному
hear.
у северного
Salam
побережья
kept her
острова
face
Корон, которое предлагает
Mr.
один
Yoon and I work together for his son's sake. Of course. Of course. Hari tilted her head slightly.
Это озеро
I just like
знаменито не
everyone's
из-за
intentions,
обилия
to be
морленности,
clear.
где температура воды может
I'm not sure
внезапно
what you
измениться до 28 до
Teo
40
is
градусов.
very vulnerable right now. He lost his wife. He's not himself. It would be very easy for someone to take advantage of that.
Это одно из редких мест,
Salam felt
создавая
anger
сюрреалистичное
rise in her,
ощущение
but her voice
разделения
stayed
тела,
level.
пока вы
I'm
перемещаетесь
not
между
taking advantage of anyone. I'm doing my job. Jobs end,
день.
Ms. Bekele. Contracts get terminated. People get replaced.
которые уходят глубоко
The
под
veneer of
воду,
politeness was
образуя
sliding off her
настоящие
face.
каменные небоскребы в
And there are
глубинах,
those who've known this family for years, who are here not for money.
который закручивается в
Is that a
пушистые
threat,
облака
Miss
при
Yoon?
каждом вашем движении.
Hari smiled. Friendly advice. The Yoon family has many people who care about their
Хотя нашить
well-being.
одинокую рыбу,
It would be a shame
скользящую
if some
сквозь четко
stranger
разделенные
disturbed a
температурные
fragile
слои
balance.
озера.
Salam stood. Thank you for the advice, but I don't
К
make
острову
decisions under
Домблера,
pressure.
который называют
Not friendly
волшебной
pressure,
шляпой Филиппин,
not any other kind. She turned toward the door. Ms. Bekele?
этакие
Selim
кавалеры
stopped.
с высокой
Everyone has a
известняковой
past.
тульей в центре и
Everyone
кольцом
has
из
secrets.
мелкого.
I'm very good at finding them. Selim turned and looked her straight in the eye. Find whatever you like.
Здесь также действует
I have
строжайшая
nothing to
экология. Его
hide.
особенностью
She
является длинная
But the
песчаная коса,
conversation left
которая
a
следит среди
residue.
Синего моря перед тем,
Someone was
как
watching,
полностью исчезнуть при
waiting,
поднятии уровня воды.
hunting for a weak spot. The question was what that someone would do once
Водная
they
гладь
found none.
отражает целую палитру оттенков,
That
от
same evening,
нежно-бирюзового до
Selim told
глубокого.
Teo about the visit. They stood in the garden, their usual place for talks
Несмотря
at
на
the end of
солнца
the
и
day.
ветра, на его вершине
Hari
все же
came to see
укоренились
you.
островки
His
зеленой
face
растительности.
darkened. She wanted me to understand my place, that apparently I'm disturbing the balance. Teo was quiet a moment.
Оставляя под диких
Hari
лесов,
and I have
где
known each other
величественно
since childhood.
открывается водопад
Our
Риман-Судан,
families always
который часто
assumed we'd end up together. But you didn't. I met Jiwon.
Весь свой пластик
Everything
и отходы
changed.
люди обязаны
Hari
забрать
took it
обратно на
gracefully,
материк.
at least in public. But she never fully let go.
Его
And
общая
after
высота
Ji-won
составляет
died,
и
she
свободы,
began to wait
чтобы
again,
сравняться с полной
to arrange
высотой
herself
этого
as the
исполина.
obvious choice for the day I'd be ready to move on. And are you ready to move on? He looked at her. I'm beginning to understand
В
what that
отличие
might
от
mean.
водопадов, которые не роса,
Selim
они
felt
выглядят
the weight of
как
his
грандиозная водяная лестница,
Teo, I'll speak to Hadi
протянувшаяся по
myself.
ответ.
She had no right to come at you like that. I can handle her.
Когда
I know
падает
you
с такой
can,
огромной
but you
высоты,
shouldn't have
вы
to.
можете услышать
You're
глухой
here
гул
for your
водопада.
son. You don't need family politics.
The politics seem to find me anyway.
И бурлит
He
непреодолимой
almost
силой.
smiled.
They tend to do that.
Он превращается в
They stood
две
in silence.
чистейшие белые
The
шелковые
night was
ленты,
cool.
которые смотрятся
Stars
гораздо
scattered
мягче.
across the sky.
Do-yoon wound the clock today.
Teo said suddenly.
The one from the library.
Несмотря на широкую
Himself.
известность, очень
Climbed up on a
немногим
chair, put in the key, and wound it. Then he said, "Now
сюда
mommy
похожим
will hear
скорее
that
на
they're
опасную
running."
экспедицию,
Tears
чем
rose
на
in
обычную
Selim's eyes.
туристическую.
Are they running?
They're running. For the first
Тик
time in
считается
5
самым
months,
широким необычным
There's a
скальным
clock
водопадом
ticking in this
на
house.
Филиппинах. Вертикальный
2
камень.
weeks later, Selim's official work on the wood in the estate came to an end. Not because the healing was complete. Healing is never fully
Абсолютно
complete.
никакой реки или
But
озера.
because
Там
Do-yoon now
находится
had the
лишь
tools he
каменная
needed.
поверхность.
A
Кажется,
craft,
будто
a
водные
language of
потоки
the hands,
сочатся
a
напрямую
bond with
из
his
самого
father,
сердца.
a ticking clock he could wind every evening. The rest
Еще
would come with
скрывает
time.
уединенные места,
Will
где
you
природа
keep coming?
сохранила свою
Do-yoon
абсолютную
asked
власть.
on the
К
last
водопаду
official day,
Уливаглак,
his
который
lower
часто
lip
называют
trembling.
лестницей в небеса.
Promise?
Единым мощным
I
руслом
promise.
вода
Every week,
спускается вниз
as often as I
бесчисленными
can,
тонкими
And
сантиметров.
we'll mend things together. Always. He threw his arms around her.
Благодаря естественной
tight,
системе
with all
подземной
his strength.
фильтрации через
I
вулканические,
love you,
собирая
Selim.
ее прямо из
I
скальных
love you
трещин.
too, little one. Yoon Teo watched them from the door.
Родный поток
When
описывают
Do-yoon
как
finally
очень
let
чистый и
go and
сладковатый
ran
на
off to
вкус.
show his father a new creation, he came closer. So that's it?
Несмотря от глаз за гигантским
That's it.
деревом
The
Бадхи,
official part. And the unofficial
дерево
part?
с корнем, открыв
Selim
миру
met
всю
his eyes.
панораму этого
In the weeks
величественного
since their talk in
водопада.
the garden, something real had quietly taken shape between them. Not rushed, not forced. It simply was. I've been thinking, she said, and I think I'm ready to see where this goes.
Уникальному
His
геологическому
face
чуду.
softened. Really? Really,
К
but
примеру
slowly,
редчайшего феномена,
properly, no
известного
rushing.
как остров на озере, которое
Slowly,
находится на острове.
properly. I can do that. Are you sure? You don't strike me as a patient man. I've learned. From
Это
whom?
многослойная сложной и
smiled.
действующей
From
вулканической
a
системы,
stubborn
которая
restorer who kept
сочетает в
telling me
себе
that healing
величественные
takes time? Selim laughed. The next few months unfolded like a song finding its melody. There were
Озеро,
dinners,
окружающее
quiet
Солкан-Пойнт,
conversations,
обладает на высокую
walks through
концентрацию
Busan as
кислоты.
spring turned to
Это
summer.
создает суровые
There were
условия,
visits to the
сильно
estate,
ограничивающие
where Do-yoon would drag Selim to see his newest creations. Little wooden
и
cars,
периодически
boats,
поднимающиеся
boxes
из-под
with
земли.
secret
Пар
compartments,
делают этот
and give her
регион,
detailed
система
reports on the
водопадов на
adventures of his
Филиппинах.
wooden
Ее
owl,
общая
Took,
высота
whom he
составляет
had
около
carved
300
himself under her guidance, and now never went anywhere without. Took flew to the stars yesterday, the boy reported. He found Mommy's
Продолжая
star.
наш эвкалиптов,
He said hi
который
from
по
me.
праву считается одним из
That was
самых
very brave of
необычных
him.
лесных массивов в
He's
мире.
the bravest owl in the whole world. There was the meeting with Teo's family.
Художника.
His
Однако на
grandmother,
самом
Madame
деле,
Yoon,
эти яркие
turned out
оттенки
to be
появляются благодаря
exactly as terrifying as promised. For the first 30 minutes, she studied Selim like a specimen under a microscope.
Самый свежий
Then she
слой
smiled.
начинается с оранжевый и,
You have a
наконец,
spine.
в бордово-коричневый
Good.
перед тем, как
This family
отслоится.
needs more spine. Thank you, Madame Yoon. And your craft is the real thing. Do-yoon showed me a box you two made together. A little crooked,
Стоэтажный небоскреб.
but with soul. Soul matters more.
Эти деревья могут
He's
вырастать в высоту от
And so is
76
my
до 100
grandson.
метров, что
Thanks to
ежегодный
you.
прирост может
Teo
составлять до
just shook
1,5
his head in
метров.
amazement. I've never seen her approve of anyone that fast. She has excellent
Дерево
taste,
также служит
Selim
важным
replied.
сырьем для
And Madame
производства
Yoon
белой
laughed.
бумаги благодаря
A
своим
real laugh. There were challenges too. Hadi didn't vanish quietly.
Система
She dropped
Рангун-Робинга
pointed remarks
удерживает
at
рекорд
parties,
как самая
spread
большая
careful
пещерная
whispers about
Восточной
the
Азии.
foreigner who'd charmed the widower. But the whispers found no
Она
purchase,
простирается примерно
because
на
everyone
11
who met
километров
Selim
и
saw what
включает
Teo
12
saw.
гигантских.
Warmth, intelligence, genuine care for the people around her.
Это место совершенно не предназначено для массового
In the
туризма,
end, Hari
поскольку для...
conceded defeat, found another wealthy bachelor, and stopped
В
appearing at
отличие
Yoon
от
family
обычного
gatherings.
провождения сертифицированных
Life went on.
спелеологов и
A
строгое
year after their
прохождение
first
проверки.
meeting, Teo brought Selim to the garden, where they'd had so many important conversations. It was evening.
Если вы не подходите
Stars
по
scattered
уровню
across the
физической
sky.
подготовки, вам
I
откажут
have something for
незамедлительно
you. If it's another absurdly expensive gift, I've told you, it's
чрезвычайно
not
суровое
expensive.
испытание,
Not in
требующее от
money.
вас пеших переходов сквозь
He took out
густые
a
тропы
small
с водой
box.
по пояс и
Selim's
спусков на
heart
веревках в темные
Before
бездонные
you
провалы.
panic, it's not what you think. Well, it is what you
Главный
think,
зал
but
Фангун
also not.
исследователен штабом и
You're not
нетронутой
making
красоте,
sense.
которые внушают чувство
it.
абсолютного трепета.
She opened it. Inside lay a
Внутри
ring,
этой системы
simple,
существует четкое
beautiful, with a small stone that caught the starlight. And beside it,
левоглак
tiny
состоит из
brass
более чем
gear.
130 каменных
That
ступеней.
one,
Они словно
with the broken
гигантские
tooth.
лестницы мироваться и
the
сухими
one Doyun had
мертвыми
held in his
пещерами,
fist for
где
5
геологические
months.
структуры уже
The ring belonged to Jiwon's mother.
Примечательно,
quietly,
что именно в этих
Jiwon
изображена
wore it
первая
on our
на
wedding day.
Филиппинах слепая пещерная
She
рыба,
once told me,
которая в
if you
1900
ever love again,
Бычков.
and she always believed I would, give this ring to that woman. And don't be stubborn
Оставляя
about
позади
it.
глубокие
Don't
подземные
wait too
лабиринты,
long. Tears rolled down Selim's cheeks. And the gear?
впирающимися прямо в океан.
Doyun
Их
asked me to put
входы
it in.
огромные, а своды
said,
высокие,
Let
словно
it be like a clock. One part can stop everything, or start it
тщательной
all up
среди
again.
них считается пещера
Teo
Кафедрал,
smiled
где
through his
глубокие
own
и темно,
tears.
синяя вода,
He's
охватывающая,
9.
крепится к крутым
I don't know where he
известняковым
gets
скалам.
it. He gets it from you, Selim whispered. And from her. Teo went down on one knee. Selim Bekele, you came
Построенный
into our
руками
house
местных
with a
жителей.
set of old
Они создают
chisels and
волнующий,
the smell of
но в то же
cedar
время
oil
ряди
on your
первозданной
hands.
и загадочной
You
атмосферы.
mended my son. You mended me. You made this cold house alive again.
Для прыжков с
He
скал,
looked into her eyes.
где прыжковые платформы
not
выступают над
asking
морским
you to
обрывом на
replace
прозрачную воду.
G1 will always be part of our family. But I'm
Завораживающий.
asking you to be part of it too. Fully. Permanently. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to spend your life with us. In whatever form, however it
Которая
looks.
считается гордым
Selam
символом
looked at the
архипелага
ring, at
и
the
самой
gear,
высокой вершиной
at this
Филиппин.
man who had begun as ice and become warmth. At the life they could build together.
Кан спит, он все еще
Yes.
демонстрирует мощную
She
геотермальную активность.
Yes.
Вдоль грязевые источники.
To all of it. The hard parts, the beautiful parts,
Эта гора также
And
служит
the
жизненно
9-year-old
важной
who's
средой
probably
обитания
going
для
to ask to
филиппинского
carry the
орла.
rings.
Эти мощные тайфуны
Teo
непрерывно
burst
меняют
out
очертания
laughing.
берегов и
Really,
прибрежный
with his
рельеф.
whole self. The laugh she had worked so hard to earn. He's
Дедушка
already
или
planned his
предок.
outfit.
Это
He
подчеркивает
told me last
священное
week.
почтение и
Of course
глубокое
he has. He slipped the ring onto
Экологический
her finger.
ландшафт здесь четко
fit
разделен на зонами
perfectly.
мшистыми
And
зарослями
then
у
he
самого
kissed her.
пика, что
Finally,
создает поистине
properly,
уникальное.
completely.
Покидая
And somewhere
высокогорье,
among
мы
the
отправляемся
stars,
к зеленым
A
холмам
woman
Квитинди,
who had loved them
несовершенно
both
уникальной.
smiled. The clock was running.
В отличие от
And it would
возвышенностей
run
на острове
forever.
Бохол, холмы Квитинди никогда
The
не
wedding was held
приобретают
in the garden a year later. Small, only for the people who truly mattered.
свой сочный изумрудный
Doyun, now
цвет,
10,
что
carried the
считается
rings
редким и
with the
удивительным явлением.
seriousness of a man performing a task of national importance.
Еще более поразительным
In his
фактом,
breast pocket
бескрайние
sat the
тропические
wooden
леса
owl took
укрывают
in a
уникальные
tiny bow tie
экосистемы,
sewn
с высочайших
especially for the
представляют собой
occasion.
древние
When
коралловые
Selim
рифы,
came down the
которые
aisle,
поднялись
the
со
boy's
дна
face
океана
lit
миллион
up. She's like something out of a fairy tale, he whispered, loudly, to his
наростов
father,
или окаменелые
across the
осколки,
whole garden.
ракушек, разбросанные
Dad,
повсюду
isn't she like a
вокруг
fairy
очень
tale?
много лет назад.
She is. Are you going to cry?
Уникальный ландшафт.
Probably.
Зеленые холмы
That's
Квитинди
okay. I
стали
brought
доступны
tissues.
для туристов
Took
лишь
reminded me.
детьми для выпаса буйволов.
At the reception, Selim went to the old workbench, which Doyun had begged to have carried out into the garden. The very one where it had all begun.
Оставляя
She
позади
set the
древние
library
холмы,
clock on it,
мы
the
открываем
one
для себя
G1 had
лагуну
once
глубоких и
repaired, and her
культовых
son
образов
after her.
на всех Филиппинах.
I'd like to do something, she said to the gathered guests. For my new family.
Чтобы добраться до этой
She took
лагуны,
out a
он
small key and wound the clock.
А еще
And
ниже,
then
в полной
Doyun
темноте,
climbed up on a
за
stool
тысячи
beside
лет,
her
где
and laid
раскинулись
his palm
мангровые
over her
леса с
hand.
причудливыми
And
корнями,
together, they
напоминающими
turned the
водных
key to the
драконов.
end. The clock began to tick, and there was nothing broken in that
Растительности.
ticking.
Они образуют
When Teo
естественную
came
крепость,
over and pulled
которая
them both
полностью
into his
изолегла.
arms, Doyun looked up at them. Are we a family now?
Тихой
real
пристанью для
one?
путешественников и
Selim
создавая
stroked his
атмосферу
hair.
уединения,
We've been a
романтика
family for a long time, little one. Now it's just official.
проецируется
Official.
на песчаное дно,
Doyen
отчего
grinned.
кажется,
Good,
будто они парят
Because
прямо.
I want a little sister. We'll teach her to fix clocks. Teo
Прыгают
choked.
в бирюзовую воду
Selim laughed.
нового
And the
поколения с
garden
пятиметровой
erupted in
высоты.
joy. Years passed. Doyun grew, started school, made friends, kept carving.
Каждое такое место —
Little
это живое
wonders,
свидетельство, одним
more
из
and
самых
more
первозданных и чистых
The
природных
clock in
чудес,
the library ticked every day.
или
And
небесно-голубой
every
оттенок
evening
в
before
зависимости
bed,
от
the
погоды,
boy went to
ярко
it,
выделяясь на фоне
turned the key,
белоснежной
and whispered, "Good night, Mommy." They're running.
каменные глыбы,
keeping watch.
обточенные водным потоком за миллионы
G1
лет,
never left the
образовали
family. She lived in the photographs that reappeared on the walls, in the stories,
чем на
in the
привычный земной
crafts that
ландшафт.
bound them all together, in the booklet of her grandmother's notes, which now sat in a place of honor in the workshop, next to that very pamphlet. When Doyun was 12, Selim sat him down beside her. "I have some news. You're going to be a big brother." Doyun stared at her for 3 whole seconds. Then he screamed so loudly the butler, Park, came running from the far wing of the house. "I told Dad we needed a baby! I told him!" Teo appeared in the doorway, covering his ears. "All of Busan heard you. Because I'm so happy!" The baby came on a rainy spring morning. A girl, bright-eyed, and already stubborn according to the nurses. They named her Ji-hye, a quiet nod to Ji-won. A new beginning wrapped in an old love. When Doyun held his sister for the first time, he looked up at Salam, his eyes shining. "She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. After Tuk." Salam laughed until she cried. That night, Teo found his son asleep on the nursery floor beside the crib. One hand rested on the railing, and the wooden owl Tuk was propped against the bars, on guard. Teo stood in the doorway beside Salam and put his arm around her shoulders. "A year and a half ago, I was losing my son," he said quietly. "I was losing myself." "And now?" He looked at the sleeping children, then at her. "Now I have everything." Salam leaned into him and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Ji-won was watching them. Not with sorrow, with peace. Her broken things had been mended. Her house was alive again. Her clock was running. And it would run forever.